We are back here with Front Office View Fridays, here with a special guest, also here with my co-host Thomas. Before we get to our guest today, Thomas, how's everything going today?
Doing great. Having a great day. Hope you're doing well and just happy to be back.
Yeah, we're excited to have you back on, Thomas. Obviously, you've been doing this quite a bit. You are playing against some weather here with the cracked computer screen, but we will be able to move forward with that. And with that being said, we're here with Trent Armstrong, Group Sales Account Executive, Iowa Cubs. Trent, how's everything going today?
Going well, going well. We have games starting tomorrow. Got a new homestand starting up tomorrow, so kind of getting prepared for that today. We're over halfway through our season, less than 2 months left, so it's flying by, but we're staying busy and still having fun. So just yeah, kind of getting stuff ready right now for next homestand.
That's awesome to hear. It's funny in sports, right? We always work, and the fact that we were able to get one day to be able to get you on the podcast is pretty nice. And
Oh yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about more of the group sales account executive role further down the podcast here, but we kind of want to go back to, what sports did you play when you were younger that really kind of put you in that mindset of, hey, I could see myself working in sports.
Yeah, I did all sorts of different sports growing up from, pee wee age to all throughout high school. But the one that, kind of stayed true was baseball. I played that from, 3 or 4 years old all the way up till senior year of high school, 18 years old. So played basketball quite a bit, did a little bit of football, a little bit of soccer when I was, really young, and a little bit of track. But baseball is the one that I always played. Growing up, it was always my favorite sport to play, watch all of that. And then once I had the opportunity to work in baseball again, it was kind of a no brainer. So that was the one that always resonated with me was baseball. So I was glad to find my way back to it.
It's cool to look back and be like, man, now I'm in a sport that I'm passionate about. Obviously, know the game. I couldn't tell you many players in the minor leagues, so like that would be very interesting to kind of to know that. But like you said, just playing so many sports and really understanding that, like, hey, I'm going to get a lot of experience, but also you learn so much from sports and learning more about people's kind of careers itself, like coaches. That's one thing that people only think when it comes to the sports that might be the only route to go, but there's a lot different ones through that. And what was something that, someone in your family that really impacted you during that time to like obviously play multiple sports and especially baseball?
Yeah, I'd say probably my dad. I mean, he was a huge baseball fan growing up. There were a lot of people in my family, from my mom to my brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents that all, played sports and liked sports. But kind of I'd say the main fixture behind, my love for baseball is my dad. And then grandpa and uncle are up there too. Obviously role models growing up and they were huge baseball fans. They were Royals fans. I ended up being a Cardinals fan, but we still enjoyed bonded a lot over our love for baseball. And then my older brother too, growing up, playing catch in the backyard, wiffle ball, all those sorts of things. So basketball ended up kind of being his sport. He really, got attached to, but baseball is mine. And I'd say, from an early age, it was, dad really liked baseball. Grandpa did, uncle did, and then even my mom did. Obviously, she didn't play growing up, but she enjoyed sports as well, and played softball herself. So we were a pretty athletic family in terms of just we all participated some sort of sports growing up. So a little brother played college football, older brother played a little bit of college basketball. So dad, was a good athlete in high school, all that. So definitely was instilled in me, that's for sure.
It's incredible. You look at your role models around you, and your foundation's huge, obviously, when you go through life and kind of realize what, avenue. And like you said, baseball. I do have to ask a follow-up question because you're a Cardinals fan. Like, how does that make sense? And then your family's or you said your dad and grandpa are Royals fans. Is that correct?
Yep.
How's that work, man? Like, that seems a very weird dynamic.
Yeah, so they were Royals fans growing up. So when Royals became a franchise in '69, and that's when my dad was born. And then so they grew up in Missouri, Kirksville, Missouri, if you've ever heard of it. And so that was just kind of the team around that area. And so my grandpa, when he was growing up too, he was kind of like baseball. Then Royals became a franchise. So it kind of made sense geographically. And He's a huge George Brett fan, and actually, my uncle, it's my dad's little brother, he was named after George Brett. So that kind of shows how big a Royals fans they are. I got Uncle Brett, and then my dad just really liked him too. I'm guessing he got it, from his dad. They were kind of uh, close enough proximity. And then me being a Cardinals fan, it just kind of was more, it was my first T-ball team. I was the Cardinals. And so I was, just psyched to be in T-ball and then, watched the Cardinals game. We had them on, cable and whatnot growing up and then saw them play. And that was, prime Albert Pujols, beginning of prime Albert Pujols. So he was a player I attached to pretty quickly. And then also, as a kid, you want to be the opposite sometimes of what your family's doing. So I figured I'd try to stand out that way a little bit.
Definitely, definitely crazy, like you said, with just the understanding of yeah, trying to put yourself kind of out there, but also it is interesting too when you say like, I mean, I look at the Cardinals; they're just a stacked team, and I know there's some years they don't do or perform as well as they would like to, but I remember because David Freese is on that team, right? I think I remember
Yeah,
that. Like, though,
that's
that
right.
was like that was incredible. I'm not a big baseball guy, but like I saw that and like just the whole crazy run there. And then you guys have such a good pitching staff, well, coaching, pitchers who are coached by great people, it seems. Because like Wainwright, I want to say, oh gosh, I'm not going to go there because you obviously know the whole roster, so I'm going to look pretty bad here. But I am going to pass it to Thomas here to ask a follow up himself.
Thank you, Victor. I just wanted to hop in real quick. Small world. My dad grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I have roots also in St. Louis. So I just wanted to hop on my dad grew up with a big Kansas City Royal fan. My grandfather was huge into the Royals, and so growing up, I actually got to go to a lot of Royals games as well, and got to meet George Brett actually. So even my team is actually the Red Sox, but I went to a lot of Royals games as well, and I actually have a lot of friends that are Cardinals fans. So it's I love the passion that you have for the Cardinals, and yeah, you guys are stacked. I just love the passion and the fan base, and I that's one fan base I can never get frustrated with because they're so passionate and just anytime you go to Busch Stadium or talk to somebody who's a Cardinal fan, they're just the passion just oozes out of everybody, and um, if you've ever go back to St. Louis or Kansas City, I don't know. Had a question. What's your favorite ribs when you've been there? Kansas City style or St. Louis?
It'd have to be Kansas City. We went to Kansas City a lot more growing up. Just with my dad's occupation, didn't get a whole lot of time off, and so when I was growing up, Royals were terrible. So tickets, were always cheaper than Cardinals when they were, winning every year. It seemed like so. That I don't recall the last time we even had the Kansas City ribs. We were a pretty basic family. We had, there was a Denny's right by Kaufman there. We stayed at the Drury Inn right by Kaufman. So, it was a lot of Denny's growing up when we'd go to Kansas City. But, the St. Louis, they do have the St. Louis style pizza I really enjoy. So, but, I'll give the nod to Kansas City for barbecue and things like that.
Thank you. I didn't want to pass it back to the Victor. I just sporadically just love my Kansas City roots and
There you go.
Royals. And actually, funny story, a kid that I babysat actually plays for the Royals right now. Went to the same high school as me, so you just never know who you know or see or do. So, but I love your passion for baseball. But back to Victor.
Thomas always has great questions, great follow-ups. We could be here forever, I'm sure. But let's move forward here, right? Choosing a college is something that a lot of people kind of just choose because they think, oh, it's a party school or it's, exciting. Like my friends are going there, I'm going to go there. But I think the biggest thing is understanding what college you're going to go to and what kind of education as well. You chose the University of Iowa. I mean, I went to University of Wisconsin lacrosse. I would obviously like to say they're good. Iowa is way ahead of us. I'm just going to be honest with the sports management program and everything on that end. But what led to that decision? And then was it something that you already kind of knew, like, hey, I'm going to get into sports. This is going to be the best avenue. It's close to, Kansas City and Missouri. What kind of led to that decision?
Yeah. So before I can answer that, you mentioned University of Wisconsin lacrosse. One of my coworkers and one of my better friends up here, he went to lacrosse as well, and he didn't even. I don't think he even went the sports management route. He went more of business finance, and then found his way in sports. So that's a small world there. His name's Sam Jochimson. I don't know if that rings a bell or not, but he went to lacrosse and is Wisconsin born and raised. So definitely have to hear about that quite a bit. But in terms of Iowa, I never when I graduated high school and growing up, I always wanted to be a police officer. So my dad and uncle were both cops growing up, and so it was just kind of something I grew up around. Um, and I originally went to Indian Hills. It's a community college close to where I'm from. They have a really good criminal justice program, so I did that. I actually worked in law enforcement for a year, and then after about a year or so, I was just like, I was only 19, didn't really want to keep doing it for the rest of my life. So I kind of got out before I really had to commit. And then I always really loved sports, and I was always kid growing up looking in the back of baseball cards, knew all the stats or a good chunk of stats, knew all the players, things like that. And so once I kind of gave up on the law enforcement idea, I thought about going for journalism, maybe a sports journalist. I enjoyed writing. I was pretty solid at writing, and I could talk about sports all day, any day with anyone you would have thrown out in front of me. So I knew Iowa had a good journalism program at the time. They still do, and it was close enough to me. It was only 2 hours from home. It was actually a lot more affordable than a lot of other places here in Iowa. So, and I was always a Hawkeye fan growing up too, so that helped. But those kind of few things are what tied into me deciding to go to Iowa. Originally wanted to do journalism, after my law enforcement career had ended, and then it, Iowa just was the best choice at the time, and it's a decision I'm glad I made. I had a great time at Iowa, and I want to be, here today. And the roles I had in the past, if I didn't make that decision.
Great answer, man. It's like it's pre-recorded at that point with how good it was.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I don't know who that lacrosse guy is, but I'm still he's a lacrosse guy, so I represent those people. But I did like that you brought up the fact that you thought law enforcement was something that you wanted to go into, and I think it's all right to like go through it and go through the punches, I guess, for a year or so or however long you tend to do something and understand like, hey, where you want to be and journalism, props to you for that. I'm terrible. I mean, I think I get roasted more about saying people's names wrong than anyone. So I think like that would be pretty scary for me to even be on the front lines. So and then being a Hawkeyes fan, were you always? So you said you were always a Hawkeyes fan. What kind of drew that? Like, how were you a Hawkeyes fan in general?
I had a lot of family that was, so I was more of, a pro sports fan growing up. Um, I kind of pay attention or hear about the Hawkeyes. Then it was just kind of natural, the first time, I really had a college football game or whatever right in front of me. It was Iowa. I was like, well, I'm from Iowa. So, and that is, back when Iowa State was atrocious at just about everything. And Iowa, they at least had a solid football team, even if, at that time, back mid 2000s, their basketball teams were pretty bad. But, I think one of the first games I watched was, back in 2008 when I think it was 2008. Iowa beat upstate Penn State at Penn State, and then next year they went on to the Orange Bowl. And I was a huge Ricky Stancy fan. He was kind of the first quarterback I watched in college, and I would have swore as a 10-year-old he was going to be what Patrick Mahomes is now, but obviously didn't pan out that way. But I'd say family had a big influence once I finally started kind of getting into college sports and having it in front of me. They were Iowa fans, and I guess being a little biased on they were better performing at their sports than Iowa State was, so they didn't want to be associated with losing. But now here we are.
Yeah. Well, you get, I feel like that's the football game that people have on their calendar, right? It's like similar to like I think the Apple Cup with Washington State and Washington, right? Like I'm not a big football guy either, but that's always a game that I literally watch because believe it or not, those games are much closer than I expected. Like even when
Right.
Iowa's way better, um, Iowa State like was really good last year, and then they obviously kind of went downhill, which is kind of funny because that's just I guess how they kind of do things around there. They do
Hmm.
really well at first, and then they play Iowa, and then after that they do pretty. It's pretty tough. I
Yeah.
won't bash him too much. I have a friend that's going there, so I don't want to discourage him from going there and making a different decision. But I also like the fact that you brought up community college because I went to community college as well because it's expensive. And the first couple of years, you're just doing your general education ones, which I think, to be honest, for me, I think it's totally a waste of time just because I already did that. And but I think it really also helps you just prepare and realize that like you're gonna have to do a lot of that stuff in your work life. And moving forward to that, you obviously are at University of Iowa. Experiences are huge there. I know Packy is someone we've been talking about quite a bit. As well as other people that really, I think Dan Matheson. I don't want to like leave someone out because you guys have so many studs there, but what really opened your eyes to getting experiences? Was there like a professor or someone that kind of pushed you there? And then what experiences did you get in Iowa?
Yeah, so kind of my start into the SRM, kind of being affiliated with that program is I was a couple of years into my journalism degree, and I had some, great professors there too that made me really enjoy my time at Iowa. But after, a couple of years, um, I had seen we got an email because I was a double major in sports studies. So I got an email from Dan. It's basically just like the invitation to um, their annual trip that they do, and ours was scheduled for February of 2020 that year. So I got the invite like end of December, beginning of January. It was very limited, trip. You had to sign up. There's a certain day, certain time they're signing up. They could only fit so many. So I was like, that sounds really cool. The trip was going to St. Louis, getting to go to a Blues game. I was a Blues fan as well growing up, and meeting with professionals from the Cardinals, the Blues, Sports Commission. There was, I think it was like Jefferson. It was like no, it was St. Charles like Convention Center. It had an Iowa alum there, and some of these places had Iowa alums. So at that time, I was like, still thought I wanted to do journalism, but I wasn't as sure as it was, and I, was going into Iowa. And then this experience popped up, and I had a chance to take advantage of it. And once I did that, it really, changed my mind of like, okay, this is what I want to do. I know I want to work in sports, maybe not the journalism route, but I just met all these great people, kind of learned the importance of networking. And so that kind of really got me going. So I guess, would be a huge thanks to Dan because, if I would have never got that email, who knows?
Emails are important to look at. I mean, I
Yeah.
obviously you get a lot of junk ones, but some stuff like that like only happens like you said kind of once a year, and
Hmm.
kind of it kind of leads into like the next question too. Like, what is something that sets you apart from others? Because that's something that you always. I mean, a lot of my interviews, a lot of people bring that up, like, hey. Why should we hire you versus someone else? And I'm like, oh, that's a good question. Like, can you give me like 10 minutes to figure it out? Because it's pretty complex when you think about it.
Yeah, I would say just kind of with my background, all the different things I've tried is, that's something that really sets me apart is like the curiosity I have to learn new things and also, being willing to do, things that maybe I initially didn't want to do, right? Like, um, some people they do have it made, they want a career, they go for that. That's all they do. And that's perfect. Kind of jealous of those people who kind of get they set a goal and they achieve that goal, no setbacks, anything like that. But it's more common to have setbacks, maybe change your mind a time or two. There's gonna be ups, there's gonna be downs. It's gonna seem like a lot more downs than ups. But I would say for me, just I'm going rolling with the punches. I've been in two different, this is my second different career. My first one was we're not even remotely close to what I'm doing now. Um, so I'd say, I'm very curious too. Like there's one of that trip and you kind of realize the ins and outs of running a sports team, having a game set up, just learn a little bit of everything, and keep wanting to learn more. In sports, especially in sales, you think that the good thing about it is I could be 10, 15 years in and I'm still going to learn something new every day, so that part's always interested me. And it's a not so traditional background, I guess, and getting to where I'm at right now, I've always just kind of been willing to do everything. I think it's just what was instilled in me growing up. Smaller town, Midwest, harder working. So, while I've done an internship and, I had to be a mascot a time when our mascot, called in sick and I was the only one that said I'd do it while others are like, no, I don't want to do that. So knowing that even if, you do something for a couple hours that you might not want to do, if you do it, that's gonna, set you apart. Like I'm sure my intern classes for the teams I've interned for, I probably wasn't like the top one that, they would say, oh yeah, this guy was, the best one we had. But what stuck out to me and like what's helped get me jobs, even talking to the people that have hired me is like, oh, I'm willing to, go above and beyond, and do not just do what's asked, um, but go, a step or two above. So I would say that was what sets me apart is the curiosity and just, being willing to do anything. It's a team effort at the end of the day. And so if you have people that aren't, wanting to do a little bit extra or anything like that, then it's not going to help. So
Great way to put it. Curiosity as well as just the willingness to help everyone, not just your department specifically. And I think a lot of people in the industry say that, but how many people actually do it? The fact that you're able to do it, it speaks volumes by itself. And there's a reason why you're obviously set apart and everything. Before I pass it to Thomas here, I do have a question. You did say that you were a mascot at one point. How was that experience? Because I've never been a mascot myself, but I'm just curious. Like, is it hot in there? Like, how are we feeling when we're in there?
yeah, so I've had two different internships where I've had to be it. So I actually interned for the Iowa Cubs here back in 21. And so at that time, we had about 20, 25 interns. We'd rotate. Each person had to be Cubby. And so I was probably, a mascot 3 times a year. It is very hot. Um, you definitely you see like the professional mascots and you're just like, I don't know how they're doing this. Like I try to walk around, have a little pep to my step, but I got comments like you look like a depressed cubby, and I was like, I'm trying, but it's really hot. Kids will, kind of hit you and beat you up a little bit, but we always had a handler, so it was always fine. Kids loved it and fans really loved it. So it was cool kind of seeing people, go nuts for him. And but yeah, it was very hot, but we got a lot of breaks and so that was good. And then when I interned for the Heartlanders before they promoted me to full time there, there was twice, 2 or 3 times I had to be it. The first time is okay, our mascot called in sick for a game. They knew I had a mascot experience my previous ventures, so I they couldn't find a backup, and so I told them I'd do it. So that one too, I didn't know how to skate, so I was they're used to seeing our mascot skate, and that game Dash was not skating; he was just walking around the concourse. So uh, all the other interns kind of gave me a lot of crap for it, but it helped me a ton when there's a full time opening after that season, and I got it. So and they had like Iowa Wild Crash's birthday party a few years ago, and so that was the day after our mascot called in sick. So I went up there again. They reimbursed me for gas, gave me a little extra money on that paycheck, which was very nice being a broke college student. So those are kind of the experiences I've had. It is very hot, yes, but at the end of the day, it's pretty fun and it's something you can look back on and kind of laugh about and say you did and others, didn't.
Yeah, you can. I mean, also you don't have to talk to people, so like that by
Yeah.
itself seems like a win-win to me, especially when we're in sales and we're making those long phone calls and
Oh
trying to
yeah.
generate revenue. So I do
Hmm.
find it funny. You could just, they could have been like, "Hey, he's got injury right now. That's why he can't skate on the ice. He's
Yeah.
going through something. He's gonna be in the
Yeah.
player's box." But I'll pass it to Thomas here to more showcase your sports experience.
Perfect.
Thank you, Victor. Well, Trent, you have quite the sports experience in your career. At first, obviously, hit on a little bit there that you've worked for obviously currently work for the Iowa Cubs. Um, I wanted to go back to that in a little bit, but I first wanted to talk to you about your experience with the Iowa Heartlanders and um, all the positions you've done, like game operations intern, account executive, manager of ticket sales and services. Gosh, that's quite a lot. And that's amazing. But what did those experiences do in order to help you get to the Iowa Cubs?
Yeah, so when I initially started the Heartlanders, obviously I was an intern. It was a very similar internship to what I had that previous summer at the Iowa Cubs. This one is more game focused. Um, and so I really like that because I really enjoyed, the guest service, customer service part of my internship with the Iowa Cubs. And so this one would, been really focused with that. And uh, that one was a blast. My boss at the time, Jarrett Mesher, he was great, probably one of the best bosses I've had. And someone I look up to as a role model. He's only, 2 weeks older than I am, but, kind of like a big brother, nice role model for me. And he, helped a ton. He really had his stuff together. He made the experience great for everybody. You could, he's easy going, but also, was probably one of the hardest workers I've known. So that, and being a new team, it was their inaugural season when I interned. So it was kind of like, hey, we're setting the groundwork, laying down the groundwork for how this organization is going to be ran in the next few years. Like it could be, we get her start off on a positive or negative note. And so, just him being there at that position he was the perfect person for that because he, like I said, one of, if not the hardest worker I've ever met. And so it kind of just helped me get that work ethic that, I already had and just even, refine it, make it even better. And, you kind of a sense of pride being like, all right, like I'm, we're working for this team and it's their first year ever. They can go to end up, they could end up doing great things. They could end up doing poor things, but it's still kind of like, that's really cool that I worked for a team in their first, ever season and kind of helped lay that groundwork down. So he's who I credit for that. And then that was one I mentioned one of my mascot experiences. And so, I had jobs. I lived off campus and had, some part-time jobs. So there are other interns that lived on campus and, maybe their parents kind of, helped them out, pay for their things. They were, freshmen, sophomores. But I was, 22. So I had to get some jobs. So I wasn't always able to come in during like office hours like some other interns were. So I knew that I had to try to set myself apart even further. And so just doing those, off-site events, things like that really helped and really caught their attention when, that following off season, they were looking for an account executive role. I had zero interest in sales. I thought I would suck at it. Um, and so, but I knew I wanted to work for that team and get my, career started because I was graduating soon. And so when I happened to be, just that back pocket brewery. It was a brewery I bartended at part time after the season, and they had an event there, and I was just kind of doing some homework before that event started. And my shift started, and their VP at the time, Jordan Q, was also great. She came up to me and asked if I was interested in and working full time. I said yeah. Then when she mentioned that to me, she thought I'd be a good fit just due to my how hard working I was during that internship, and so she kind of ease my fears and let me know like, hey, like you can teach sales just about everybody. Sales is, a lot of people's first experience with sports when they're working. Like that's just sometimes where you end up to kind of get your feet wet. And so that's kind of why I saw it. I was like, okay. So interviewed a couple of times. Was, lucky enough to get the role. And so started, first phone call I made, I had no idea what was going on. They put a script in front of me, just kind of help and obviously not read word for word, but get an idea. And that would distract me even more because I'd be like, oh, I missed question 6 and there's a 10-step, process here. So definitely at first it's a little bit of a struggle of like, okay, like how do I call to somebody? Like at first you just want to right away when they say hello, be like, hey, do you want to buy tickets? Like that's obviously not the way you go when you're pitching anything to somebody. So but I got the hang of it pretty quickly. My boss at the time, who was the director of ticketing, was Molly Uphoff. And she's probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. And she was a great boss. She was very understanding, very calm, relaxed. We had some struggles in terms of the organization. We had some really bad ownership the first few years of the Heartlanders' existence. And so things were pretty stressful. She always, kept calm. She was the one that everybody always had a million questions for, whether it was employees, fans, but she was always stayed really calm, and that helped me a ton into you keeping a calm demeanor. It can get stressful no matter what sport you work in. When you're in a season, it's going to be stressful, and so she helped a ton with that, and so that helped me just keep selling and keep selling and keep selling. Still keep that mindset of doing whatever it takes to succeed, go the extra mile, and then they had about a couple months before that season ended. They thought I did well enough to earn a promotion to manager of ticket sales. So, it was definitely interesting as my first, promotion, and kind of helped oversee three other account executives who, I mean, I happened to be friends with too. So that was definitely eye opening of like, all right, got to separate friendship from work here. And, but no, it was great. It's a great experience. And then, was getting ready to go into the next season with that same role. And unfortunately, we had an ownership change. And, um, you know, as those things tend to happen when ownerships, kind of change, people usually get laid off. So unfortunately, most of our office got laid off besides directors. So, that sucks. I was really excited for the off season and kind of getting my feet wet even more of, being a manager of department, overseeing people and trying to, brainstorm how we can um, keep improving as an organization. So, but then, once new ownership came around, I wanted to come back. There were a couple of job opportunities I had that just weren't convincing enough for me. Um, weren't enough to, pry me away from wanting to go back and finish what I had started with the Heartlanders. And so they're lucky. They're nice enough to, bring me back for one last season. I kind of had an idea that, if I go back, I'd probably be, looking at my last season, but with new ownership and stuff, I wanted to feel like I had something to prove and want to see that's how far we could take the operation. And I mean, my last game ever, we had a team's first ever sellout. So kind of a badge of pride there for me.
Well, thank you so much for that. It was amazing. I had two follow-up questions, and I'm gonna hand it back over to Victor. You actually hit on two of them. First, your mentors, some of your mentors. You kind of already mentioned a few of them, so I guess that was kind of been answered. But I mean, do you have any besides the ones you mentioned that mentored you? And then I'll ask the other question. You can just go and answer it. Is there anybody or any advice for anybody that starts out with a new organization, like you did with the Heartlanders? Any advice to anybody starting in a new organization that you would give any advice through your experience with the Heartlanders? Just any advice at all. Thank you.
Yeah, so those, Jarrett, Jordan, and Molly were kind of the three I looked up to the most when I was with the Heartlanders. But then obviously I have mine with the Iowa Cubs now. Clayton Granquist is a big one. He's our ticket manager here. Um, Randy Wayhofer, he's a big one. He is our uh, assistant GM, vice president, and Sam Burnaby, he's our general manager. Been here 40 plus years. So those are three people I really look up to as far as Iowa Cubs, and so it's just uh, been great. Learn from a lot of great role models. It's I'm definitely blessed, and it's they're all of them. The thing they have in common, the most I'd say, is kind of open door policy. I know I can go in there anytime I need to ask a question, if I'm struggling, advice, and they'll be the first to tell me good job if I do something good too. So, um, and another thing is, I've been blessed with them, is they teach mistakes more as learning lessons versus mistakes, right? Like they understand the human nature part of everything. Whereas you have teams, whether it's professionals, minor leagues, who say there's one week I get a sales goal and I don't hit it. And then it's like some of those teams are like, oh, sorry, you're gone. We have tons of applicants. Like a lot of teams aren't very patient, and we're a very patient team. And it's more of a, okay, maybe you didn't hit your goal this year or this quarter. What can we do to help you hit that goal, instead of just, like, all right, you didn't hit your goal, you suck, you're out. Like, I feel like there definitely are teams that operate that way, and especially in a major league level, which, they get hundreds of applicants for just about every position. But being still fairly new into the sports world, it's only been 3 or 4 years. It's a great feeling to have, and it makes you want to work even harder. But as far as advice I have for those that maybe start with a new team, it's just be prepared for anything, right? Like um, when the Heartlanders first started, the first ownership group they had, they were terrible. We didn't know it, right? Like they ended up investing in a bunch of teams during COVID, which is obviously a terrible, business decision to do that. And so they had just, didn't have money, right? Like there was a lot of things that didn't go right. They stopped paying bills, and you know, you're not going to get that often, right? It was kind of a random case of we just had a really bad group at first. A lot of these other groups, when they buy a team, they're more, committed, do a little bit more research, but just be willing to do, go above and beyond, right? Like you're not gonna, if you are getting hired as an account executive for this first year team and, the ECHL, which is the league I worked in, if you are expecting to only just sit there and call people all day, you're 100% wrong, and you probably will not last long. So that's a lot. That's the same for a lot of minor league teams. Is just being willing to help out where it's needed, but especially for a new team, like take that extra step, take the extra initiative to help people out, whether it's in marketing or whatever. Like because everybody, even if some people have experience in sports, some don't. You're all in the same situation where you're trying to get a team up and running, and it's not easy. Uh, I think that's something important to remember too, and just expect the unexpected. Like I said, obviously not everybody's going to get the same crappy ownership we had, but it could happen. Some people just have a lot of money that they just want to throw at something for kind of a hobby, but just expect the unexpected. Be willing to do, kind of whatever it takes. This is treat it as your baby. Even if you didn't have a stake in investing the money, treat it as your baby. Take extra care of it, and it'll really, really help you go far. So if you're going to be a salesman and you're like, oh, I'm just making calls, going home at 5, you're not doing yourself or the team any favors.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I'll hand it back over to Victor.
I I agree with that, Trent. I mean, I'm starting with a new organization from the ground up, and it's important to kind of pace yourself as well as just understanding what's in task. Like probably buying a lot of different sports or trying to invest as much as you can right away is probably not the best strategy. And I think that's something where yes, you have a new team, you want to really show the excitement, but you also have to understand as a business side what's going to set you up for success. Like is it going to be buying a ton of stuff right away? I can tell you based off my understanding, no. But maybe some companies are able to do it. It just depends on your demographic as well as where you're at, right? In Iowa, hockey's pretty tough, to be honest, to sell. I mean, I try to sell it for Iowa Wild, and a lot of people don't even know that there's a team, and we
Yeah.
play at a pretty big venue, and so I think it's just more of the education piece is important, like you were saying there, and then just the impact that you have around you, the foundation's so huge in this world, in this sports industry. So it's nice that you're able to have those, teammates that can push you up. And then when it comes to sales, you can't be negative, man. Like for me, I could be negative right now because I have very limited resources, or I could just be efficient and reach out to as many people as I can and at least get some engagement, excitement. And then from there, that leads to obviously good leads. And in this world, there's a lot more prospecting, especially on the group side for you. I'm sure you and I can go back and forth about it. It's interesting. It's uncharted territory for myself, so I'm learning a lot. But for you, you're having that ambition. No, baseball. You kind of know who to kind of engage there is important. But moving over to our last question here before you get to Flash Friday questions, what's like your mindset when it comes to networking? And then how does that kind of relate to like your work ethic when it comes to reaching out to specific people and trying to pick their brains?
Yeah, I'd say at first my mindset towards networking was just kind of, reaching out to anybody and everybody I could. Um, I'm a little bit more intentional about it now. I obviously I really love any, networking events. My last year at the Heartlanders, our, new leadership was big on, going to these events and networking, even if it's just a, banquet at some hotel down the street, go to it. So, which was a good strategy to have, and it, helped us. So I networking, it's, just being open to like everything, even if it's not, um, you're not getting a sale out of it right away, or maybe ever. It's something that, okay, maybe I meet this guy that, has his own hardware store at XYZ banquet. Maybe it's just him and his wife that run it. So there's not a group outing opportunity there, right? But it's like I met him, got along great. He's gonna have friends that come to the store, friends he knows. There's other options we have. So just really being intentional of not just like being so pushy. Like as someone that's new in sales, it's so easy to do that because you don't really know. Like you don't really know what you're supposed to ask until you kind of, you get rejected enough. You see other people go their business. So it's just really just being there to network to just really make a connection. Like, people make the mistake all the time. Even, I've seen people that have done sales for forever that, they go to, say we have a golf event at Top Golf and there's other businesses there. 10 seconds in, they're, basically asking for business, right? So that's going to turn people off so quick. I think of myself, it would turn me off that quick. So I'm intentional about building relationships. Sale will be great, and that's obviously what you're trying to do. But more of the relationship building for me, because if I, show I'm not just trying to be pushy, they're going to respect that. And if they want to do an outing, they'll do an outing. If they don't, and you're not pushy about it, they're like, okay, this guy's cool. He's not calling me 8 times a day, asking for my business. And maybe if I'm connected, I have these other friends, customers, don't want to do something, I'll, vouch for him. So more of this relationship building now versus, just trying to sell every single person there. Which I get end of the day, you're a salesman, but it's tiring for both. I mean, let's be let's be real. You don't go to every networking event just like, pitching a suite or a group package to somebody. Like you're gonna do that. But just really the relationship building and starting that relationship is kind of my mindset towards networking. And like I said, it's helped a ton of my work ethic. Like that's, part of it, right? Is meeting new people and, connect with them. It's not, just easy work. Like some people really don't want to meet you. Um, you're going up to a stranger, and basically trying to sell them, on you, about you, and, your product you're pitching. So, uh, that's kind of been my mindset towards networking. Obviously, it's progressed over the years where, like I mentioned, being new, you don't really know that. You're just like, hey, buy this. And so you learn that's not, really a great method. It's going to be very, very rare. Or if you go up to someone at some event, LinkedIn, whatever, where you try to get them to buy something right away. 9 times out of 10, probably more than 99 times out of 100, if you do that, it's not going to work out well. So I would say, just being intentional about that relationship building has helped me a ton.
I think it's important, like you said too, when it comes to building those connections while you're in college and building that kind of foundation. And I think it's also great that you brought in the fact that like a lot of people are going to try to sell you as quick as possible, right? Like we know those people, like the car industry is huge on that. You walk through the doors and you already got Thomas and his friends running to you
Hmm.
like, hey, I saw you first, man. And you're like, well, I'm just
Yeah.
getting service. But they're like, no, you need a new car, man. Like that's not
Yeah.
worth it. So I think we have an awesome opportunity in the sports industry to be able to use it as a way where families can get together, groups can come together as a whole and have fun. And so yeah, I mean, it took me a while to know that, but for me, it's like not attacking all the time. It's more building that relationship, and then at the end of the networking, like hand them a business card, say, hey, if you need anything, if you guys think it'd be great to have come out, let me know. I'll get you guys taken care of. So I think there's a right way, obviously, and a wrong way, just the way you approach it. But we'll move to our Flash Friday questions here. I'm going to pass it over here to Thomas to ask his, and then I'll ask mine, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much, Victor. I have a good one for Trent to start off, and I think you'll like this one. What is like when you're in Kansas City and you go to the plaza, like where do you go first? Or like what's your thing to do? Food? Are you shopping? What are we doing?
We were always big. Um, so usually are about 2 or 3 day trips. Normally, we would, if we are going to like say a Thursday game, we'd make sure to get there on Wednesday. I'd say what I enjoy time towards the end is, just checking into the hotel first, relaxing. 4 hours driving as a kid seems like an eternity. Now it's like almost nothing if you're going on a trip somewhere. So that was always the biggest. I just want to relax in the hotel room, go swim at the pool, and grab, a bite to eat close. And then after that, in terms of, extracurricular activities outside the game, we were already going to. We really like that Legends Outlet Mall. So we did a lot of different back to school shopping there. Just kind of lined up with the schedules of when we go to the Royals games and, when school will be starting back up. So we do that. There were some aquarium trips, from time to time, but, I was such a huge baseball fanatic growing up and even, before my brothers got older, maybe had other interests with their sports. They were also, we're pretty big fans growing up. So um, it was really pretty laid back, pretty simple of just, go to the hotel, relax, go swimming, get some food. And then we were, we'd go to the day games a lot of the time. So we'd be up and at it, 8 a.m., ready to walk over to Kaufman. So,
Thank you. And then the next question is actually about Kaufman. Do you have a favorite part of Kaufman? And you can't cheat. You can't say the waterfall. I'm just kidding. Do you have a favorite like section, area, like place you like to sit?
yeah, I mean, Kaufman's always been a super underrated stadium to me. I feel like it doesn't get the love it deserves. I've just always, enjoyed it. Maybe it's just being biased and being there a lot and a lot of, good childhood memories from there. But even, 3 or 4 years ago, I went again and, uh, I saw the great time. We've sat, all over. When it'd be really hot, we kind of have more nosebleeds. We could try to be a little bit in the shade, but last time, I was about 6 rows up from, the home dugout, which was pretty cool. But um, it's one of those stadiums I've enjoyed everywhere I've sat. Like I said, the fountain's cool. We would just, go there for batting practice, try to catch home run balls. But they have that Hall of Fame out there in left field that we've went to a time or two, which is really great. But I really like where we sat the last time. We were about 6, 7 rows up from the Royals dugout, so we had some pretty good seats and saw everything. They got beat pretty bad, but it was still cool because usually we're kind of more nosebleed, second level seats to try to, you have 3 kids with you, got to try to keep a little cool. So, uh, but those would be, kind of my favorite parts, and I always loved, getting some merchandise and stuff growing up. So anytime you go to any sort of team store and get some new hats or church jerseys, whatever, it was worth it.
Nice, thank you. I have just two more questions and hand it to Victor, just because of the Kansas City thing. I tend to go a little crazy sometimes. You mentioned the area you grew up in, and since I know a little bit about that, my father grew up in that area too, as well. And as you know, they're known for their um, not waterfalls, but what would you say? Uh, I guess. Yeah, waterfalls. Did you have one of in the area that you kind of enjoyed the most, or since that to all the listeners out there, Kansas City has a lot of water. I don't know what the word it would be. Water kind of things around the city. So there's an area that just has a ton of them. So didn't know if you kind of had one near like there's like a country club called Indian Hills Country Club. So I just passed by on that little area and you're going to the to down or suburbs of Kansas City. So I just always see so many of them, but just curious if you had one that might have been your favorite.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There are definitely a lot of those whenever we drive, whether it's just driving around, kind of seeing the city or what have you. But it wasn't any one in particular. We always wanted to try to do like the sea worlds or worlds of fun, whatever they have there, but we never ended up doing that. But there wasn't one in particular that I really loved, but I think I know what you're talking about. And yeah, you're correct there. Once you get to a certain part, you kind of see a lot of them, but nothing really particular that I had in mind.
Gotcha. And my last question, I'll hand back to Victor. What is something that you like to do when you're not doing sports and then you're not like you're just hanging out and you just like take your mind off it, like just anything. What do you like to do that's not sports related?
Yeah, I would say I'm you're pretty typical mid-20s bachelor. I like spending my time with friends and going out whenever I can. Obviously, burns a hole in my wallet from time to time, but it's always worth it. I have, four of, some of my best friends here are people I work with. So we're a pretty close group in our front office. We go out a lot, but there's, a select few that, I'm with, weekly. And if there's a chance to go out to a patio and grab a beer or two, it's I'm rarely ever going to say no. So really just spending time with friends, whether it's, going out to a bar, mini golfing, trivia nights, things like that. Um, Pretty close to a lot of my friends. And then, staying in touch with family whenever I can. My mom comes up here quite a bit. She's about 2 hours away. And then I have, family here. I lived with my brother here for a little bit before I signed a lease here. Um, and so, he has a dog and a cat. So I am an uncle. It does count. So I'll go and, visit them whenever I can and, dog sit for them whenever I can. Like I told you guys, I'm currently cat sitting for my aunt and uncle right now. So that's pretty simple, pretty laid back, like to hang out with friends, family. Um, I like to go on walks and work out. So nothing out of the ordinary you'd expect from, like I said, a mid-20s bachelor.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Back over to you, Victor.
Yeah, you like going out, and obviously you brought up the bartending thing, so you kind of put yourself in the situation.
Yeah.
But what's your favorite drink to make as a bartender, and why?
I was always lucky enough to work at breweries, so there's a lot of pouring beer, but I always enjoyed um, making any sort of like Moscow Mule. Because like I mean, working at a brewery, it's about as fancy as you're gonna get, but also still got to be a little not creative, but I mean, you got to see which one was best, and once you get into kind of different flavors, you can kind of taste test a bit. So I always enjoyed those. I mean, they're very easy, very simple to make. The one I hated making the most were Bloody Marys. Really not that complex. I couldn't stand them. I think Bloody Marys are the most overrated drink, um, probably ever. And then Zap probably had some of it. I had some hatred going in, and then I'd make them. And of course, it'd always be like work at a brewery. We serve Bloody Marys during like Sunday during the day, and then you have a line of 20 people you're pouring beers for, and then here comes this group of 4 or 5 ladies that all want their Bloody Marys a certain way, and just so Moscow mules would probably be my favorite in terms of what I've got to experience. I've got to make some margaritas, and I bartended at Wahlburgers when they had them in Hy-Vee. But Bloody Mary is by far least favorite in terms of making, in terms of just how much they suck.
Well, you're gonna hate me. That's my favorite drink is Bloody Marys, but
Oh
I'm
man.
not one to hate. Hey, I'm not a complex guy. I'm very easy. I'm very low. I would say low maintenance, so you don't have to worry
All
about
right,
me coming through. I'm just like
there you
just
go.
whatever's gonna work for you. Please put a pickle in there or some kind of. I don't like the
There you
ones that
go.
don't
I
have
can do that.
anything in there because that's just a deal breaker for me.
All
And
right, I
then
can do
good, there we go. Next time in Iowa, I'll definitely hook you or
it.
find where you're headed and everything.
All right.
My last question here, you're a big baseball guy. If you could have a baseball card of one specific player that's signed, who would it be and why?
That's a good question. I used to collect a lot of cards when I was younger. It's more just to have them and read stats. I never got into too much of like the buying and selling, but it was good. I have thought about four and like been like, all right, I need to start. I would say I don't want to give the typical, Shohei Ohtani or Aaron Judge question. Can it be? Does it have to be current or can it be past? Anybody?
Oh, it can be passed. I was thinking more like Babe Ruth for myself, just because it's an ego
Right.
booster for me.
I would say for me, it's a fantastic question. I always really, um, even though he was ended up not having a great career, if let's say he would have been on the same trajectory he had like his first year when he was really dominant, because he was like my favorite pitcher by far for a year or two, was like prime Matt Harvey. There was something about him I just like when I was playing Little League growing up, I tried to like model him, his pitching stance, all of that. I just thought he was nasty, and he was for about a year or two. And then, yeah, obviously some skeletons in his closet and couldn't stay healthy and whatnot. But I'd say him for that, I think it was 2012 is when he was just insane. So probably one of the more stranger answers you'll get when you ask that. But I I didn't want to give the typical, Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge answer, even though those probably would be good. And then I guess kind of a second place, we'll say someone that was, good throughout their whole career. I would honestly say King Griffey Jr. He just had a lot of swag to him and, brought a lot of energy to the game, and, it's easy for people to look up to. So we'll go King Griffey Jr. and, Matt Harvey for the two cards where I'm like, all right, I'd love that.
That's solid. Matt Harvey, was he on the Mets? Is that
Yeah,
I was gonna
he
say.
started on the Mets and had one or two really good years, another couple years that were solid, not as dominant, and then he couldn't stay healthy, and then he just kind of lost. He went downhill, but I think 2012 there he may have been a rookie, and he started the All-Star game and he was just dominant. It was when I really started getting into pitching and trying to practice and be really good, and he was like the one guy I was like I need to be this guy. So
Yeah, he's the Mets fan base is pretty hard on their players. I will say that just with who comes in, who
yeah,
leaves. So I mean
yeah.
that's good. You want to have that passive fan base as well. But Matt was insane. Me just watching him a little bit. Before we wrap up here, how can our listeners further the conversation? And then what is some last minute advice you'd give to people who want to work in sports?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you guys, when you post this, will tag me in on it. So feel free to tag me in on that post. And if anybody has any questions, whether it's about my current role, former roles, anything, message me anytime. My messages are open. So I'm more than happy to help out with, whether it's a someone in college looking to get their start, someone who's maybe going to a new job, wants to leave their job. Anything you really want to ask, feel free. Anything Iowa Cubs specific, you can email me at trenta@iowacubs.com. If you want to ever come to a game, reach out to me that way for sure. But LinkedIn's always open. If you have any questions, want to connect, more than happy to. And then just advice for, students trying to work in sports, kind of like we all touched on at some point during this interview, is be as curious as you can. Try, whatever you can to, take a step, ahead and be a step further ahead than, your peers. People always say, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. It's a very cliche thing, but it's true a lot when it comes to when you're trying to get a job. Uh, like I said, during my internship when I was with the Heartlanders, like there's, 15 of us probably. I probably wasn't the number one that, if you would ask, my friend Jarrett and who was my boss, if you would ask them or I pick one guy, like you would have been like, this is who I want to, hire full time, this and that, just in terms of, what they're bringing. It probably wouldn't have been me at that time, but, I was good enough and I had a really good work ethic. I did things that no other intern was willing to do. They want to swallow their pride for. So that helped me a ton. And then even when I applied for this Iowa Cubs job full time, I had the internship. They probably would give the same answer of like, oh, Trent was good. Um, he's probably not like the all star that we had that like is going to be, just amazing, but he worked really hard. He improves and he's willing to do anything and he's curious. And I think, when I applied for this and my supervisor at the time, told that to my assistant GM and he ended up hiring me. That helped me a ton. So, do whatever you can to stick out. Just work as hard as you can, go above and beyond. Don't just do what's asked of you. And then be curious too. You could be interested in like marketing right now, then you could end up, working in sales. You could want to be, a groundskeeper right now, and you could end up working in a team store. Like it's so many different things. You never know what's going to happen if you go into an interview or your networking event, career fair, whatever, and you was like, oh, I just want to do marketing, nothing else. Unless you're a really good candidate and they really need a position, that's probably going to be a red flag for them. If you're like, nope, not willing to do anything else. It would be for me. If I was ever hiring somebody and they're not willing to at least consider something else, right? So, just do whatever it takes. Be curious. Pete, that's going to get you even further than just straight up being talented.
Yeah, do more than just the normal. People like people who are go-getters like yourself, and that's why you've been able to climb the ranks. And next time we talk, you could be a director, you could be a VP. Like that's the cool part about sports. You never know where it can take you. And so we want to thank you, Trent, for being on the podcast. I want to thank my co-host Thomas as well. If you guys do want a further conversation, definitely reach out to Trent. We'll have his socials when it comes to LinkedIn as well as the email on the podcast. And with that, we'll be back next Friday for another Front Office U Friday.